What's up, guys? This is Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, and the overall markets. I want to talk about some big news that came out involving Tesla, what's happening with the whole Israel and Iran situation that's very intense, and also why tomorrow is going to be a very crazy day as we have FOMC. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $2,000, you're guaranteed 25 in total. And deposit $5,000, you're guaranteed 60 free stocks. The offer ends at the end of July. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with this market. So as far as Tesla's going, as you guys can tell, we have this very nice looking double top-like structure that has developed. We need to see Tesla get back above that 325 area for a rebound. If we can't do that, we're looking for 312.5 as our support. If that fails, this double top will lead to some downside, taking us down to this imbalance around the 294 area. The 4 hour is showing some weakness on Tesla, and the daily time frame is not looking that great. 312 is once again our support, which if it fails, we're looking for the low 300s, if not 297 to come next. The overall market came down, though it's not just Tesla that's dipping on its own. There was some negative news that came out for Tesla, but there's other reasons for why it's selling off like this because the whole market was dragged down, right? If you look at the overall market, the majority of stocks are in the red. You have like retail trade in the red, Amazon's in the red, Apple's in the red, Nvida's down a little bit. Some tech stocks are in the red, and the majority of stocks are in the red. So it's not just Tesla, the whole market's also dragging this down to some extent. Also, when you zoom out of Tesla, this is also on a bit of a downtrend, at least for the last couple of weeks. We were at this like 370 area. We came down in a lower high, came down, lower high, came down, lower high. We tried to break out of this blue trend line only to get a rejection. And now we're back below the trend line and we're showing some weakness. So overall, Tesla remains quite weak. But the question is, why is tomorrow going to be such a big day? And what's happening with all this news? I'm going to talk about that first and I'll break down more details. There's some news coming out that Tesla is going to be basically pausing, the overall production of the Cybertruck and the Model Y for about a week in Austin, Texas. They're going to be doing this because of production and maintenance reasons. So that could be why they're going to be doing it at least for some time. So this is going to be stopping for about a week, beginning on June 30th. According to reports, they're going to be once again halting production just for maintenance. However, despite that, there is good news about the Robotaxi launch event. It's supposed to be tentatively launching on June 22nd. So we'll see how that goes for Tesla. Once we get very close to the date, it could be a lot more impactful. But for now, Tesla still remains quite weak. Piper Sandler gave Tesla an overweight rating. They reiterated that same thing with Morgan Stanley. However, the price-price ratio is starting to dip just a bit as Tesla does not have as much strength compared to before. Historically, Wednesdays tend to be green only about 48% of the time. And then June is historically a very strong month for Tesla, but things are changing a bit for this month because of external factors in the markets. Tesla was already up so much in the early months, and now it's beginning to slow down. So why is the market slowing down? Right now, we're actually seeing Tesla down in the after hours. Same thing with SPY. It's beginning to sell off a bit. And it has a lot to do with some geopolitics. And I think that's what's going to be affecting us as well for tomorrow, which may also affect FOMC. So I'm going to break down what's happening with President Trump and geopolitics involving Israel and Iran. And then I'll break down what's happening with FOMC. So there was some news that came out from President Trump who put on his Truth Social page. We now have complete and total control of the skies over Iran. Iran had good sky trackers and other defensive equipment and plenty of it, but it doesn't compare to American-made, conceived, and manufactured stuff. Nobody does it better than the good old USA, according to President Trump. Then he said that we know exactly where the so-called supreme leader is hiding. He's an easy target, but safe there. We're not going to take him out, at least for now. We don't want missiles shot at civilians or American soldiers. Our patience is wearing thin. That's what he said so far. He's also talked about an unconditional surrender. So what does all of this mean? I want to read some of the quotes from President Trump and why this is very important. So looking at what President Trump is saying, he mentioned that he met with his national security team in the White House to discuss what's going on in the Situation Room involving Israel and Iran. And then on top of this, there was some news that came out as we're seeing a lot more, tensions rise between Israel and Iran right now. President Trump also mentioned that he wants to see the Fed cut rates, lower interest rates. He wants to see lower costs, and he wants to see them bring down the cost of governmental debt. That's what President Trump said. He said he's not reached out to Iran for peace talks, and he's not in the mood to negotiate with Iran. Then he mentioned that there's going to be a lot of work to be done. He went on about that as both countries are beginning to continue to shoot rockets at each other, Iran and Israel. Then he said that, he went on about how the US has now helped to control the skies over Iran. And then he's saying that Iran's defensive equipment does not compare to the US made ones, and that the US is a very, very strong. He said the same thing again about how he did talk about how if Americans are attacked, then the US is going to be forced to essentially address the situation, get involved in the war. He went on about that, and then besides that, we just heard the same things being said. And then right now, we're hearing the German chancellor saying that the U.S. is going to decide today whether to join the Iranian conflict with Israel or not. And then President Trump is saying that he is, or at least it's being said that President Trump is saying that he is seriously considering joining the war on Iran and launching a strike against their nuclear facilities. He said that 2 times he's considering it, and that he may be having to address the nation very soon. So what does this mean, guys? This is actually a very, very sad situation because these wars really affect innocent lives. My heart, my thoughts, my prayers go out to everyday people who are involved in all of this on both sides, right? The Israel and Iranian side. There's innocent people on both sides. And then at the same time, you have to consider the other economic effects of this, right? When you consider that, 48% of all the oil reserves on the planet are actually in the region and in the Middle East, this is causing crude to go up quite a bit, which is affecting things. Historically, the stock market, 1 month after we enter wars, it does tend to be very mixed. Sometimes it's bearish, sometimes it's bullish, sometimes it's flat. But typically, 6 months and 12 months later, we tend to be bullish. Of course, there's external factors involved. So you want to keep all of that in mind. And then I also want to add that if you look at crude, it's been going up a little bit so far. This may continue to climb, especially if the US gets more involved in this war. That could be another inflationary factor that's worth mentioning, especially since most of, or at least a large percentage of our oil comes from the Middle East. On top of this, there's a 97.3% chance the Fed is going to keep rates the same tomorrow. And this is how tomorrow is going to go. So we know the Fed will most likely keep rates the same, but how is this going to pan out? Firstly, tomorrow is going to be Wednesday, June 18th, 2025. Okay, we have some mortgage data, housing data in the morning. And then as time goes on, we have some bill auctions at 11:30 a.m. Everything's going to be minor. And then at 2 p.m., that's when the action starts. So at 2 p.m., we're going to see the interest rate decision. We know the Fed's going to keep rates the same, most likely. There's a 97% chance. Then we have the FOMC economic projections report for the first year, second year, current, and long term report. If the numbers for the interest rate projections are above what we saw from before, so which would mean that the Fed is kind of like projecting they're going to be once again more hawkish. That would be more bearish for the markets. If they're below what we're seeing from before, that could be a sign the Fed may have more cuts in store than previously expected, which would be bullish. So we'll see how it goes. Then at 2:30 p.m., we have the press conference from the Fed, which Jerome Powell giving a speech. Whatever the big guy says is going to be very important. If Jerome Powell is more hawkish and he starts talking about this conflict between Israel and Iran, how it may affect inflation, if he says there could be another spike in inflation or something like that, that could be more bearish. If he is doing the opposite, if he ends up saying something very different and he's very, very quiet and ambiguous, this could also be kind of neutral for the markets. So you want to be very careful with what Jerome Powell says. He's going to cause a lot of volatility. So lastly, just know Wednesday is going to be the last day of trading until Thursday. Wednesday is when we have these couple of earnings, and then Thursday the market's going to be closed due to Juneteenth. So we'll see what happens. So that being said, what do I see for Tesla and the others? Keep in mind that we have this double top like structure right here on Tesla. Not looking too good. We're going to see if we could hold 312 tomorrow. Could consolidate in this like 308 to 312 area. And then if Jerome Powell causes us to launch upwards tomorrow, if we get some good economic projections and Jerome Powell launches, we're looking for the 320s. If not, we're looking for a dump below 300 back down towards this imbalance. The imbalance takes us down to about that 294 area. So there's going to be some downside risk off a double top if we end up getting that rejection. So watch that very closely on Teslas. We have a double top here. May consolidate and start dipping lower as time goes on. So there's going to be a risk of that. On SPY, we're not looking too good. We have a double top here we're rejecting. I do expect 595 and basically 592 to be tested. But as we dip because of this war news, depending on how intense things are, this could drag even lower. So in case 595 fails us, we'll watch 592 or so. We could consolidate here. Then we're going to see if we get a big bounce back up to 600 or if we continue to dump into like the 580s. So you want to be very, very careful nonetheless, depending on how things go. However, I anticipate more downside consolidation, maybe even more downside if we get lots of bad war news. You want to be very careful. It also depends on what Jerome Powell and the Fed say, so that could also be affecting things. To be bullish, like I said before, you want to get back above at least 600 and 602. And to be bearish, you want to see us fail at 595. That's going to likely take us down to 592 or below. So the odds favor the downside. And like I said before, it's not just Tesla. The whole market is what's coming down. We're seeing all these stocks coming down that's dragging Tesla down because of how it affects the algorithms. So that's why we're seeing Tesla kind of like selling off like this. So Tesla's looking very weak off this double top. We're favoring downside right now. We're going to see if 303 holds. And if this fails around this 200 EMA, the red line here at 312.5, then we have a double top setup, and these typically lead to more downside as time goes on to the low 300s, if not the 290s. So please keep all of that in mind as we're seeing some weakness developing on Tesla stock. Also, to add on to this, it's not just the whole market dragging Tesla down. The weekly is looking a little bit weak right here, so that could also be favoring 294 if we continue to reject just temporarily, right? Even though we're kind of strong, forming like a cup and handle, there could still be a temporary downside before this thing tries to bounce again. But even if we do dip another like 10, 20 points, we could still be much more bullish for like the much longer term. Okay. So it's just a short term move we're looking for right now. And we are favoring downside looking at this setup. So just be very careful. I'm just here to give you guys a warning about that. I'm trying to be very unbiased when I say that. Anyways, going back to SPY, we're looking weak here. We're going to see how well we hold 595 to 592. I do anticipate we dip a little bit lower, just like Tesla. Then we'll consolidate and we'll see if Jerome Powell causes this to bounce or not. If not, we could be dumping even more as we look a bit more bearish, technically speaking. On the QQQ, it's the same thing, essentially. I think my line got deleted. That's a little bit unusual. But anyways, regardless of that, we're still looking kind of weak right here. As far as the triple Q goes, we need to get back above 530 to get back up to these highs. If we don't hold 527, though, there's going to be a risk of us returning to 523. So you want to be very, very careful. One risk on the QQQ is that when you zoom out, this resembles a left shoulder, a head, and then a right shoulder. This is a sign that tech is looking weak. If we can't get back above 530, we're going to be at risk of dipping to the low 520s or below for a head and shoulders. So we still look a bit more bearish on the QQQ in my personal opinion. So we'll see if we can get back above 530 depending on FOMC. I anticipate we're going to be dipping towards like 525. Consolidate, then we'll see if we bounce off FOMC or not. If we don't, if we get some really bad word news, we could just continue to dump like this. So you want to be very careful. The IWM Russell 2000 is looking kind of weak. As you guys could tell, we have this head and shoulders like pattern. There's a left shoulder here, a head, and then a right shoulder. And if we can't get back above this 210 area to bounce, we're going to likely continue to fall back down to 205 or below, all the way down to these lower levels. As we're making lower highs and lower lows, we are favoring downside back down towards this 205 area. There's a good chance we're going to continue to fall, so please keep that in mind as time goes on. But overall, we're looking a bit more bearish on the IWM. Can we get back above 210? We'll see about that. Otherwise, we're favoring downside for 205. For now, we look weak. We could dip to 205, and we're going to see if Jerome Powell helps us bounce or not. If not, we are still anticipating the low 200s. On ES, we're looking weaker. This also has sort of like a left shoulder, head, and right shoulder. And if this continues to fall, we could be looking for a test of this 200 EMA at 59.30 for a big rug pull. Now, if we're bullish, you want to get back above like 6,100. If that breaks, we're looking for a nice rebound move. If not, we're going to likely continue to fall back down to 59.80 or below. ES is showing weakness as we're making lower highs, so we still favor the downwards direction. And overall, we're not doing a great job at holding up. So we'll see. I do think we might be dipping a little bit more towards like 6,000 flats. But we have to see what happens with the very important war news and what happens with FOMC. Will that launch us back up or do we continue to fall? As of right now, we favor downside. On NQ, we have a very similar setup, right? We have this left shoulder here, a head, and then a right shoulder. If we get back above 22,000, we're looking for a rebound. If we can't do that, we're going to be favoring a move back down to 21,500 or below. There's a left shoulder, head, and right shoulder. And as of right now, we favor downside, so keep that in mind. For Bitcoin, we're rejecting off 110,000, and we were trying to get bought back up around 103,000. So for now, we're just continuing to trade sideways in this range. So I think that we're favoring the downwards direction, at least for the time being. So we could be looking for a retest of this low around 103,000. Like I said about Tesla, we have that double top, not looking too good. We'll see if we consolidate near 312. Otherwise, we're going to continue to fall to the low 300s. Nvidia is looking weak here. We have a bearish divergence, and then simultaneously, we want to see if Nvidia can get back above this 145 area to remain bullish. If it can't do that, we're going to be favoring a move down to fill this gap all the way down to 141. If that fails us, we're going to be dumping even more. So please be very careful. On Aapl, we're looking weak right now. We're making lower highs. I would like to see us get back above this like 198 area to rebound. If we can't do that, we're going to be favoring a move back down towards 193.5. Netflix also has a slanted head and shoulders. There's like a left shoulder, a head, and then a right shoulder. If it breaks and holds 1240, it could try a rebound back up to these highs. If it can't, there's going to be a risk of us dipping to 1180 or below, so keep that in mind. MSTR is trading sideways. We're going to see if we hold 368. If that fills us, we're dumping back down. If we break 380, we're going to be looking for a rebound move, so I do think we may consolidate in this range before we continue to fall. On Celsius, we're forming a bearish divergence. We have to see if 45 breaks. If not, we could continue to fall back down to about the 42.68 area. On Supermicro, we're kind of range bound here. We have 44 as resistance, and basically the low 40 areas are support. So we're kind of going back and forth like this. So we're going to see if we hold above 44. If not, we could be dumping to fill this gap back down to 41.5. So keep that in mind. Palantir has a bearish divergence. We're going to see if we hold 137. If not, we could be dumping to 133. And the odds favor more downside all the way back down towards these lows. Rivian is making lower highs here. We're going to see if we hold above 13.74. If not, we could be dumping much lower, all the way down towards 12.8. SoFi has a bearish divergence. We're going to see if we hold 14.2. If not, we could be dumping back down to fill this gap around 13.69. AMD, a little bit weak. We have to see if we hold above 130. If not, we could be dumping back down towards 123. ARM has a bearish divergence. It is favoring a move down to 140. We're going to see if we hold above 146, though, just to be safe. But I could see 140, then 136 if that fails us. Right now, PayPal is selling off. It needs to get back above 70.65 tomorrow. If it can't do that, we're favoring a move back down to 68 or so. So it still looks kind of weak to me. Coinbase is looking weak. We're going to see if we could hold 251. If it doesn't hold that, we could be dipping back down to 242. So we're going to see how it goes. 251 is our main support here. We're going to see if we bounce. If not, we could be dumping back down to 242. On Amazon, if we fell at 213, we're looking for a dump to 211. If we get back above 216, we're looking for a rebound. If 213 fails us, we could be dipping to 211, so you want to be very careful. Meta has 694 as our support. If that fails us, we're looking for 688. And we have this resistance around 700, so you want to be very careful. If we don't hold above 700, we're watching 694 as support. If that fails us, we are favoring some downside for now, approaching FOMC. Google's not looking too good. We got to hold 176.8. If we can't, I see 175, then eventually lower levels. We had a high here. We came down, made a lower high, which is not the best of signs. I need to see it get back above 180 to turn bullish. If not, we're favoring 175 or below. On Microsoft, we have the same thing going on. This kind of resembles a left shoulder, head, and then right shoulder. Unless we get back above 480, we're favoring 475, then eventually back down to 471 as our main support. On DJT, we're favoring downside right now, so we're going to see if we could hold 19.5. If we can't, we're going to be favoring the low 18s. The VIX is looking quite bullish to me. We're actually favoring upside right now off an inverse head and shoulders. So I think the odds are going to be favoring this push back up towards this 24 area. So we're going to see if this holds up or not. We have a nice like double bottom right here. This could be favoring the upwards direction for 25. So it depends. If we hold 21.12, I expect more upside, so keep that in mind. The 10-year treasury yield is looking okay. We're range bound right here. The 10 years kind of flat, so you want to keep that in mind as time goes on. This is going to be very reactive to what we see during FOMC. And then the dollar has a double bottom. It's looking a bit more bullish. It's favoring 99.2. When the dollar pushes, that's typically more bearish for the markets. But of course, we need confirmation and such. So my view is that the market's looking a bit more bearish going into tomorrow morning. Even like Tesla might be dipping a bit more. It's barely holding its 200 EMA at 312. If that fails us, we could be dipping all the way down towards like 305, 303. So we favor downside. We could consolidate after that. But then what's going to matter a lot is going to be the Fed. What do they tell us about what's going on involving the war? How is that going to be affecting monetary policy? What's happening with inflation, such to expect a lot of volatility. Also, any overnight war news that's very intense can also affect things. We'll see what President Trump has to say as he addresses the nation very soon. So, very, very intense things right now, guys. We have to see what ends up happening. I thank you all so much for listening. So, please have a good rest of your day. But just know that right now, the market's showing weakness, and there's going to be a risk of downside tomorrow when we start things off. We'll see what Jerome Powell and the team end up announcing. So keep all of this in mind. I thank you all so much for listening. I really appreciate you guys so much. And I'll see you guys very soon tomorrow. Thank you for listening, and peace out.